What's going on, everyone? So, there's a lot of questions and speculations about what is going to happen with Paul George this upcoming offseason, right? Is he going to stick around with the Clippers? He wants a max from the Clippers. Clippers seem a little reluctant to give him the max, although there are some reports that the Clippers do intend on keeping Paul George as well as James Harden. They're getting their new arena. Gotta imagine that they would kind of want to keep all the names attached to it, right? Because it's kind of the whole idea and like what Steve Ballmer wants is like, he wants the big names on the back of the jersey to kind of funnel in into the new arena to kind of draw the crowds. Paul George, he's been excellent for the Clippers. Right? Obviously, the Clippers have been a disappointment since Paul George and Kawhi came, but a lot of that is just due to injuries and a lot in particularly because of Kawhi Leonard. Now, Paul George has definitely dealt with his injuries and his issues, but it's kind of hard when you're counting on the other guy and you're there and the other guy isn't. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with the Clippers. Now, there is a lot of talk about him heading to the Philadelphia 76ers. Joel Embiid is like out and open in public, basically saying like, hey, hint, hint, wink, wink, come to the Sixers, we're going to upgrade the roster. We're going to get a guy. And he's like sitting right next to Paul George, like staring at him and nodding his head at him. And it was actually kind of comical, but nonetheless, right? Like Paul George on the Sixers does make a lot of sense for several reasons, right? One, Paul George, I don't know if he's definitely not your number one guy. Number two, I think it depends on who your number one is, right? Like if you paired Paul George next to, Giannis or Jokic or something like that, could you win a championship with Paul George? Possibly. But as like your third guy, I think he would be a home run. He's still one of the best two-way guys in the league. This is a guy that is an excellent difficulty shot maker, can score and shoot it from pretty much anywhere on the court, can defend the best player on the other team. You pair him with Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey, I think you have a real possibility of winning an NBA championship. The other thing is out east, you're talking about like the Knicks and the Celtics, probably the only two teams that you may have to deal with. I mean, obviously Milwaukee with Giannis and Dame, but they didn't look very good at all this past season. Obviously, it'll be another year, so maybe it'll look better, but Dame's only getting older. So I don't really see them as a threat. I think that they need to kind of retool that roster, period. Cavs, I think Paul George, Tyrese Maxey, Joel Embiid. I think at worst you're the third team in the Eastern Conference, and you have a real chance of coming out the East and being in the NBA Finals with those three. But another option that I think makes a lot of sense for all parties involved, and I actually think could even be potentially maybe a better option for Paul George, would be the Oklahoma City Thunder, right? Paul George returning to the Thunder, because I think he would just fit in seamlessly with the Thunder. Because the beauty of Paul George is he's not like a selfish star, right? Like he's fine kind of fitting in and blending in and being a part of whatever the team is, right? Like we've even seen him allow other guys to play big and have big moments and hit shots, and he'll just kind of play make and stuff and defend the best player on the other team to kind of give the Thunder, obviously another shooter, but on top of that, another guy that can go and close that doesn't need setup, right? Like you could just give him the ball and he could just go hit big shots. He can defend the best player on the other team. Him and SGA, I think, would be a lot of fun to watch. Obviously, you have Chet, but again, Chet's a guy that kind of needs setup, right? Like to where Paul George, he could just get the ball and go and just really just apply pressure to opposing defenses. And I just think he'd slot in. I don't think he would take away from an SGA, from a Chet Holmgren, because that's the thing, right? Like if you're to get somebody to add to the Thunder core, you don't want that person to take away from SGA and Chet, right? And I don't think Paul George would. He's really good off ball. He can defend the best player. When you need him to cook, he can cook. He'd take a ton of pressure off of SGA. Obviously, he's older, right? Like, so, it would be a little bit more of like a win now type move because, he's 34. He's not a 27-year-old anymore, but that might be good for the Thunder, right? To kind of have an adult and a guy that has been through the grinds and was the guy on a really good Indiana team. And, he's familiar with the Thunder. And it also would be kind of a full circle, kind of funny, ironic moment because it's like, Paul George ends up getting traded for SGA from the Clippers. It is just like, now look, but I do really like the idea of adding Paul George to the Oklahoma City Thunder. Because the Thunder, again, they have money that they need to spend. It's like, who can you go get that would be better than Paul George and actually make sense on the roster, right? Like another target I really like is like a Lauri Markkanen. I like Lauri Markkanen a lot, but like, again, like what is the cost going to have to be? And look, I understand like the Thunder have a army of picks and stuff, but like you don't want to just like throw things away just to throw things away. And I mean, look at Sam Presti said like with the Gordon Hayward trade, right? Like you don't want to just make those mistakes. And Paul George, you could essentially get for free, right? Like you could essentially just go bring him in. You'd have assets, you'd have things. You could maybe go make another trade or, a minor move or adjustment one way or another and kind of capitalize on Paul George coming in and now go and contend for a championship. I mean, the Thunder were already a contending team. They were the best team in the Western Conference. So Paul George is going to that. You're adding a legit 3-and-D, not just like a standard 3-and-D wing. You're talking about a guy that can play basically 2 through 4, can defend essentially 1 through 5, depending on who the 5 is. Obviously, you don't want him on Jokic or whatever, but he could at least, hold his own a little bit, put up a little bit of a fight. And also, he's a guy that is arguably one of the best difficulty shot makers in the league. SGA is another one, right? And Paul George is a guy that can close. He can, again, score and shoot from anywhere, take guys off the dribble, give you another over-the-top shooter, which is something that the Thunder could really use, give you a guy that can space the floor and be an offensive threat from three-point range, right? Guy that can make plays, guy that can rebound, right? Like, he does pretty much everything. And, again, you wouldn't have to have him be your first or even necessarily second option, right? You're bringing him in, and he's essentially your third option. And he's a guy that can go get you 20 plus a game, defend the best player on their team, where, like a team like the Sixers, right? Because Paul George, like one of the big concerns with Paul George outside of injuries, but Paul George played 74 games last year. So that's a good sign. Hopefully that can continue. But, like the other concern is come the playoffs, he'll have some disappearing acts at times. Right, he's had some, don't get me wrong, some big games and some big stretches. I mean, he's had playoff series where, with the Thunder, he had a playoff series where he averaged almost, I think, 30. He was like 28, 29 points, something like that. But he's had excellent playoff runs. He's had excellent, just games and had that game. You can almost guarantee a game where Paul George is just going to go off and essentially win you the game by himself. And then, the games where he doesn't show up and he does have a little concern and, the playoff P and then the pandemic P, like you have SGA, you have Chet, you have these guys, right? That can kind of step up and pick it up for you. So it's not as big of a concern. You also, have Jalen Williams, right? Like you have other pieces, other options that can, maybe help you, if you have that game where Paul George just doesn't show up, where like the Sixers, for example, like if Paul George doesn't show up, Joel Embiid, playoff Joel Embiid is not the same as regular season Joel Embiid, and that's a big problem that playoff Joel Embiid has, is him just completely disappearing. So, like the concern is like, what happens if both those guys just disappear? Right? That's not good if you're the Sixers. Where the Thunder, I think that they could weather that. I think that they'd be in a position to where it's like, okay, like we can, he has a bad game, that's fine, but the good is going to outweigh the bad. And Paul George can still do other things when he's not, if he's not on. He's just having an off night, right? He can, again, still defend the best player on the other team, make plays, rebound, all the ins and outs and some of the dirty work. But anyway, as always, this is a discussion. I pass the question on you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. What do you think? How do you feel? What are your thoughts? Do you like the idea of Paul George on the Thunder? Do you think, no, stay away from Paul George? I get the age concern, because I know that that's probably the thing that people are going to jump to the quickest. But again, I think the Thunder would benefit from kind of, again, having a bit of an adult in the room, having a guy that has that experience and has a little bit of the pedigree of I've been here, I've done that, right, type thing. Obviously he hasn't won a championship, but I still think that he's a guy that can help you. I mean, he's been in conference finals, he's led a team, right? He's had deep playoff runs, he's been the guy, he's been the second guy, right? I think he could really kind of help and help benefit just the Thunder, period. But anyway, again, how you feel, whatever your thoughts are, love to hear it. Let me know down in the comments below. That being said, if you haven't liked this video, hit that like button. Helps me a lot. So we enjoy these types of videos, and I truly appreciate it. Not subscribe to the channel, hit that subscribe button. Turn on the bell notifications. Appreciate y'all. See you in the next one. Thank you.